it's time to spend a little time talking about pediatric illnesses. Your child is going to get sick. It's just part of being a kid. And in fact, your child's going to have perhaps dozens of illnesses over the course of their young life. We're going to tell you about some of the more common ones and how to deal with them and what things to worry about and when things you don't have to worry about. We're going to start with dehydration. Dehydration is basically a state where the body doesn't have enough fluid, so they become dehydrated. Kids need a lot of fluid. Compared to you, a child needs about 2 to 3 times proportionately more fluid than you do. So they need, and there are formulas, and these are numbers that your pediatrician can walk you through, but basically there are a certain amount of intake every child should have on a daily basis. So when your pediatrician says your child needs to be fed 4 or 6 3-ounce feedings a day, that's to keep your child hydrated. That's to keep enough liquid going into that little body to keep them so that they don't become dehydrated or basically dry. They have not enough fluid.
So when kids are ill, we hear from parents a lot of time, my child doesn't want to eat anything, he doesn't want to drink anything. Well, kids don't need to eat when they're sick, but they do need to drink. So if you bring your child to a practitioner, to your pediatrician, to an emergency room, the first thing the doctor is going to ask you is how much has your child had to drink over the last amount of time, this morning or yesterday. So be very alert if your child is ill with either vomiting, diarrhea, and we'll talk about some specific illnesses. Be very alert to the amount of fluid that your child is getting over a period of time, over the morning, over the afternoon.
Right, you're used to your child having those 4 3-ounce bottles a day, and now they're only drinking 1 ounce.
Exactly.
That's the kind of thing your pediatrician or your emergency physician is going to want to know.
Exactly. Now, some potential causes of dehydration include fever, vomiting, diarrhea, or the child just not really wanting to take anything in. There is a unique pediatric illness that can cause some mouth sores inside the child. They're very, very painful. They're not very dangerous, but the kids run the risk of becoming dehydrated because it just hurts to swallow, and there are some things you can do for that. So
it makes a lot of it's very logical. Either there's not enough fluid coming in, or there's too much going out, or a combination of the two, and that puts your child at risk for dehydration.
Exactly.
There are signs of what we call advanced dehydration, where it's not just they're a little bit dehydrated, but they're dehydrated enough that they need pretty urgent, if not frankly emergent medical care. That's where you might bring your child to see us. For instance, your child may be having some decreased urination, and you are very aware of how often you're changing your baby's diaper every day. And you're also aware of kind of how heavy it is every time you change it, how much they're urinating. If you're changing it less often, and when you change it, there's not a lot of urine in there, that's a sign to you that your child may be dehydrated. If your child cries and no tears come, that means that there's not enough fluid in their body to go to those tears. So it's another sign of dehydration. If your child's mouth is dry and parched, I mean, babies are gooey. They're supposed to be gooey. If your baby isn't gooey, if their mouth is dry, they're dehydrated. And if you ever get a child to the point where their eyes are sunken in, where they're extremely thirsty, where they're listless, they're kind of blobby, they just don't have a lot of tone, they're just kind of blobby, they could have cool hands and feet, or their skin feels doughy, like bread dough that hasn't gone in the oven yet. You know, baby's skin is just wonderful and squishy and luscious. It's not like that. It feels like bread dough that's never been cooked. If your baby feels like that, or looks listless, or their eyes are sunken, or you're really concerned about dehydration, please get them to the hospital. And if they're really looking not great to you, call 911, especially if they have discolored hands and feet, you're having trouble arousing them, that's the time to get them to us, and often by ambulance.
Right, exactly. Now, if you have a child who maybe has vomiting or diarrhea and you want to prevent dehydration, you want, as we said, to have them drink. They need to drink liquids. Now, what type of liquids are going to be important? They're going to be things with calories and also things called electrolytes. What are electrolytes? Electrolytes are minerals and some other substances that are really important to keep your body kind of functioning. You don't want to give your child just free water, just tap water. It doesn't have calories and it doesn't have the minerals and can really kind of dilute the minerals the baby still has.
And you all know what these minerals are. They're basically
like salt and
things
potassium,
that you see every day, and you consume them every day. Your baby needs them too.
Exactly. Now there are some commercial products out there, things like Pedialyte and Infalite. And they even make popsicles, which are a great way to hydrate up babies and older infants that maybe have some dehydration. They're really, really great. On the internet, you can actually find some recommendations of how to make some of your own kind of home remedies for these dehydration situations. But it's going to be a set recipe of proportional amount of sugar and salt and water that will come close to
Right.
what the
and it's worth
commercial
looking that up
products are.
because you can get it off to the point where it can be a
Exactly.
problem. So it's worth really looking up these recipes. You can make them homemade for sure. If you don't want to spend the money on
Right.
Pedialyte, go ahead and make it at your own home. But look up the recipe, make sure you're putting the right proportions of things in.
Right, and some fluids that we see parents giving may be too salty, things like boiled milk or broths, things like that. So make sure that you're following either some type of standard recipe that you can get from the WHO websites and other
that's
websites.
the World Health Organization.
Health Organization, or make sure you buy some type of commercial product that's out there that's meant for dehydration situations.
Right, and be a little bit careful with family remedies.
Right.
Sometimes family remedies with things like we always gave the baby dilute
Right.
tea. Well, that kind of thing
Right.
doesn't have, remember, calories and minerals, calories and sort of things like the salt and things we were talking about. So avoid sort of the family remedies and stick with something
Right.
you can either buy in the store or find the actual recipe on how to make it at home from a reliable source.
Exactly.